Vaultz was really born from a clear vision to create a publicly listed company that's deeply committed to Bitcoin and really built on a foundation of credibility, transparency, and institutional discipline. So, unlike many other listed Bitcoin vehicles, our approach really isn't just about holding BTC, it's about being a trusted cornerstone of the Bitcoin economy. So, from the outset, Vaultz was really designed to offer regulated, transparent exposure to Bitcoin through a clean balance sheet and a growing treasury strategy. And, Bitcoin isn't just the best performing asset of the past decade. It really is the foundation for a new global financial ecosystem. And, I saw that potential back in 2013 when people were still dismissing it as an experiment. And, for over a decade, I've built businesses that turn Bitcoin from an idea into infrastructure, kind of similar to what we're doing at Vaultz. And, from ZipZap, which is the first cash to Bitcoin network, to GoCoin, one of the earliest payment processors, to then leading Changely, the first crypto swaps exchange serving millions, each venture I've been a part of really has been about one thing, and that's trust.
This episode of the Bitcoin Economy is brought to you in part by Ledn.
Need cash but don't want to sell your Bitcoin? Ledn is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, issuing over 9 billion loans since 2018. And they were the first to offer proof of reserves.
With Ledn, you get custody loans, no credit checks, no monthly payments, and more. Visit ledn.io for more information.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Economy podcast. We have Eric Benz, CEO of Vaultz, and Aleks Nowak, COO of Vaultz. Welcome to the team because you are new to Vaultz. And both of you, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, excited to chat with you guys. You guys, I think, are coming in with a fresh approach, to being a Bitcoin treasury company. And, certainly in the U.S. market, everyone's trying to decide what is the name. Is it, BTC, TCCT, throwing out all these acronyms? Is it leveraged Bitcoin equity? Which companies are just holding a little bit of Bitcoin like Tesla? Which ones are aggressively using leverage to buy as much Bitcoin as possible? So excited to hear your guys' perspective and learn a little bit about Vaultz. Would love to start with just learning about Eric, about Aleks, and what led to the creation of this company.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm the CEO of Vaultz Capital. My name is Eric Benz. Vaultz was really born from a clear vision to create a publicly listed company that's deeply committed to Bitcoin and really built on a foundation of credibility, transparency, and institutional discipline. So unlike many other listed Bitcoin vehicles, our approach really isn't just about holding BTC. It's about being a trusted cornerstone of the Bitcoin economy. So, from the outset, Vaultz was really designed to offer regulated, transparent exposure to Bitcoin through a clean balance sheet and a growing treasury strategy. And, Bitcoin isn't just the best performing asset of the past decade. It really is the foundation for a new global financial ecosystem. And, I saw that potential back in 2013 when people were still dismissing it as an experiment. And, for over a decade, I've built businesses that turn Bitcoin from an idea into infrastructure, kind of similar to what we're doing at Vaultz. And, from ZipZap, which is the first cash to Bitcoin network, to GoCoin, one of the earliest payment processors, to then leading Changely, the first crypto swaps exchange serving millions, each venture I've been a part of really has been about one thing, and that's trust. Trust that Bitcoin can be used, exchanged, and really held with confidence. So, we're public on the Aquis growth market under ticker Vaultz. We're regulated, we're transparent, we're built for investors who really want exposure to the Bitcoin economy. And really, if you believe in Bitcoin story, I feel this is just the beginning, right, Aleks?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. So I'm Aleks Nowak. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Vaultz Capital. I guess as to my background, I began my professional career as a commissioned officer in the British Army, whereas a logistician. Later moving into maritime security. Then some 12 years ago, I moved into fintech and blockchain, where, amongst other things, as one of the founding members of the UK Digital Currency Association, worked extensively, around the early stages of regulation here in the UK, and I believe it was impactful, across Europe and the rest of the world. I founded and served as Chief Information Officer at Blockware, building exchange technology platforms. But over the years, I worked closely with businesses generally undergoing sort of major digital transformation and helping them navigate complexities of new technology and regulatory change as well. So Vaultz is doing something really exciting now, and I was inspired to join Vaultz because I think it offers something truly rare and an opportunity to help build another new business from the ground up, and a company that's not just reacting to Bitcoin's growth, but helping to architect how both institutional and retail access, trust, and benefit from it. So, I think Vaultz stands apart from this ambition to pair both, Bitcoin native conviction with operational and regulatory rigor. So, as Bitcoin is now becoming more mainstream, this is a fantastic opportunity. Perhaps the last real opportunity to build massive holdings in Bitcoin, as its price trajectory is so strong, at least in the macro time frame. So Vaultz is offering investors a stake in the financial system of the future, if you will. So if you've earned that money, Bitcoin lets you keep what's yours, from a value proposition. And Vaultz's mission to build significant holdings, as a bulwark or a hedge against fiat erosion is, what appeals to me, and that's why I joined.
Yeah. I just finished reading on the Bitcoin Asia trip, the book, The Wager. So I want to do deeper dives into the British Royal Navy right now because I'm very fascinated with it. Excellent book. Aleks, especially with you living in London, tell us a little bit about the market. I think that's something we talked with Smarter Web Company about, of like how the UK market is different than the US. There's not as many access points to Bitcoin, to exposure to this Bitcoin economy, like you mentioned, Eric. How do you guys see the market? What's your approach to it?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, we're listed on the UK's Aquis growth market, as Eric mentioned earlier. So, as opposed to US vehicles, listed vehicles like ETFs or trusts, or indeed other public listed companies, we enjoy access to the UK and European capital markets under the UK regulatory frameworks, which obviously offers benefits like institutional credibility, visibility, and compliance with the UK rules. And I think it's worth pointing out that the FCA and the UK rules have basically been the driving force behind the vast majority of historical European regulation and regulation going forward. The FCA has set the gold standard amongst the markets, but I think crucially, Aquis's framework gives us some nimbleness that US markets often lack, whilst maintaining regulatory standards. So, our structure is very simple, is very transparent, and it offers, direct equity exposure to a growing Bitcoin treasury. Obviously, we're looking to expand into global markets, as we announced, with the OTC application for OTCQB to give access to our stocks for US investors as well.
Yeah. And then from that, Eric, also, how do you guys see capital raising? There's a lot of different approaches. People have done convertible bonds. People have done preferred equities, which is, Michael Saylor hitting ChatGPT, hundreds of times and running out of credits to create these new financial products to raise more money for Bitcoin. How are you guys thinking about the capital raising process?
Yeah, so that's something that we're approaching very strategically. And, we've seen a surge in treasury allocations among corporates, and it's really no coincidence. It's being driven by concerns over inflation, weakening fiat purchasing power, and a realization that Bitcoin's track record makes it a very compelling diversification and store of value. For companies that want to hedge long-term risk, Bitcoin is really increasingly being treated not just as speculation, but as a strategic capital preservation. So, we believe it's sustainable because, Bitcoin really is inherently deflationary, and adoption by corporates, offers both stability and scale to the market. We're witnessing this shift from experiment to standard practice. Bitcoin on corporate balance sheets is no longer fringe. It's not just a hedge, it's a strategic tool for resilience in uncertain markets. Adoption is being accelerated by maturing custody solutions, regulatory clarity, and liquidity depth that really didn't exist 5 years ago, right? And this adoption wave is self-reinforcing. So as more companies hold Bitcoin, its credibility and liquidity really strengthen. And this is really the focus that we have at Vaultz. Aleks, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And certainly when we talk about, sort of treasury management, I think that all CFOs and corporate treasurers will start thinking slightly differently when they see Bitcoin as a part of the balance sheet strategy, comparable to the way that currently they may hold foreign currency reserves, gold, obviously with modern advantages, being digital, sort of portable and liquid and on chain. So, it provides another asset class that sort of sits outside of the fiat value chain in the same way that gold does, but also doesn't represent an illiquid asset on the books.
Mhm. I believe you called like crossing like 100 BTC like a line in the sand. What are some of the goals that Vaultz has, for hey, this is what we're going to hit? And we've seen that a lot of guidance has creeped its way into expectations for treasury companies. So how are you guys thinking about that? Like when you issue something that could be considered guidance?
Well, I mean, I think bluntly put, we don't issue anything that could be considered guidance. UK regulations are quite rigid in the things that we can and can't talk about. For example, we can't make forward-looking statements. When we release information, it has to go through RNS, registered notice to shareholders first. Certainly for me, speaking from a personal perspective, that's quite a change from the environments that I'm used to having operated in the non-public sector, where you could gush fluidly about what the long-term goals are. And of course, it goes without saying, we do have long-term goals. And obviously we want to grow the treasury. But in terms of setting specific benchmarks or numbers, my hands are somewhat tied from being able to do so. But suffice to say, we want more.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that, we do expect Vaultz to really be firmly established as a trusted UK listed cornerstone for institutionals and retail exposure for Bitcoin. We anticipate significant growth in our BTC treasury and footprint in the capital markets. So more broadly, corporate Bitcoin adoption will become increasingly mainstream, even standard. So as more firms look to safeguard capital and participate in the digital finance infrastructure, we'd like to be there to support those efforts.
What if you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, now you can with Blockware. New tax guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill will allow American miners to write off 100% of the cost of their mining hardware for a single tax year. That's right, 100%. Blockware's mining as a service allows you to do everything from securing the miners to sourcing low cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You get to stack Bitcoin at a discount every single day while also saving for the upcoming tax season. Get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/TBE. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/TBE. Now back to the interview.
So where you guys had mentioned, participating in like the Bitcoin network itself and some of the infrastructure. Is it Lightning? Is it, getting hash rate, as a Bitcoin miner? Like what's your guys' like plan, for participating in Bitcoin?
So as things stand right now, as a company, we operate mining hash power. That is something that's set to continue. One of the particular sort of requirements, and I think foibles of the UK market as opposed to markets elsewhere, is that a pure treasury play isn't something that's acceptable to listing authorities of the markets, and indeed a Bitcoin treasury company in its purest form isn't a recognized type of entity. So it's beholden upon us that we must have an operational business. And actually, rather than this being an inconvenience, I think that this is a good thing, because the classic Bitcoin treasury play involves obviously bringing in capital, issuing shares, buying more Bitcoin, and storing those Bitcoin. But of course, even the most simplest of operating expenses, such as custody, comes with an overhead, right? And a company based on that premise, once they stop being able to issue more shares or to buy more Bitcoin, they're no longer able to hive off any operational capital to sustain the overheads of the business behind. So with our mining strategy, we're looking to bring that to the point of profitability where it will cover, by and large, the operating expenses of the rest of the business. Because I think in a market downturn, which we've all been in the space for long enough that we've witnessed several market downturns with Bitcoin, there is a dramatic effect on liquidity. And, people will stop wanting to put money in. If they think it's going down and then suddenly it's going up, they want to put loads of money in. for us as a business, it's really imperative to have that operational component, because it means that in those kind of market circumstances, we're able to weather the storm. And a situation whereby operational capital has been depleted and the functional side of the business can no longer run, we're not going to find ourselves in a position where we need to liquidate treasury holdings to do that. And of course, that's a huge operational risk for what I think many Bitcoin treasuries in the space are currently facing. Particularly those who are using sort of large amounts of leverage in their acquisition strategy.
Yeah. What are some of the nuances or unique ways of like Bitcoin mining in the UK? Power is obviously like the biggest thing. We see things like Texas and their grid. There's problems with it, but there's also like a lot of opportunity with it. And we were just talking about Oregon before. The hydroelectric power off the Columbia River is a huge boon.
I mean, look, we're not mining on the UK power grid. We've got the most expensive power in the world at this stage.
Duly noted,
I believe. So, definitely mining here is not economical. So, we're mining out in the cloud data centers that are co-located with, hydropower or geothermal power, because, at the end of the day, ensuring profitability from a mining operation really comes down to one simple thing, and that's the cost of your electricity. Obviously, you need the most efficient equipment as well. But the mining is not taking place onshore.
I think, just to add, I mean, mining is not just about the raw scale; it's about resilience and optionality. So, we're building a model where mining generates steady Bitcoin-denominated cash flow, helping to smooth out volatility and support the treasury growth. Sustainable treasury strategies require operational depth, not just headlines. And we're not looking to grow based on hype. And, I think the executive team that we've kind of put together, as well as the Bitcoin board that we've assembled, really is a critical component to that long-term growth that we see fit. And, the mining really reinforces the treasury, which is a very strategic pillar for us.
And I think worth noting as well, through the prism of how Aquis set out their guidance for companies that are holding Bitcoin or indeed any other digital asset in treasury, there needs to be a compelling reason why that's happening. So the operational business model does need to support the requirement for those holdings in treasury. And it also needs to scale, with the treasury holdings as well. And obviously mining is something that we can scale as large or as small as we like, but it's something that can easily grow alongside the business. I am currently formulating a strategy for how we're going to best optimize that and maximize the revenue opportunities from that side of the business going forward. But until we've made the announcement to shareholders around that, I can't really say too much more. But watch this space over the next few months. I think it should be quite exciting.
Yeah, you guys, have made it clear there's a lot of hoops you need to go through essentially for communication to make sure they're satisfying regulators. A lot of treasury companies really build a lot of their following and a lot of their strength, in their stock price through building communities. And so we see big communities with, irresponsibly long MSTR, following strategy. We've seen some around like Metaplanet have certainly grown a ton because of the Japanese market, their need for yield, the younger population looking for opportunities. How are you guys looking at community? How do you balance that with not being able to say too much? So you're trying to get them excited, but you can't.
Well, I mean, look, to be clear, it's not that we can't say anything anywhere else that we haven't already told our community. So this RNS first process is not a gatekeeper for us releasing information to our community. As soon as we have something to say, we will say it there. And our tempo of registered notice to shareholders is quite brisk compared to other listed companies in the space. We also have engagement regular Twitter spaces, and that's something that we'll continue to do. And we're also working on other things that are of general value to the community. Like we've commissioned a research report, which we hope we'll be able to publish in the next few weeks from an independent outside party looking at the treasury space. So giving back in terms of that educational content is very high on our priority list. And of course, we do have a community, and we know they're out there, and we appreciate their following, and value their input.
Any in-person events in the future? Will you guys do anything locally in London? Are you going to go? Bitcoin Amsterdam's November.
Oh, don't
Yep.
tease us. Don't tease us with that. But we are a sponsor with Bitcoin for Corporations, who are putting on the event in Amsterdam. So we're going to be glad
Yeah.
to make a presence there, which will be very exciting, along with their other events. But coming up next week in London on the 12th of September is the Bitcoin Digital Commonwealth Symposium. Well, there'll be other digital asset companies there, as well as, some great attendees. We'll be a speaker. We'll have a panel. We'll obviously be seeing a lot of friendly faces there. So we're definitely excited for that event to take place next week. And then following that, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Bitcoin for Amsterdam, and of course, more events to come.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping to make it Amsterdam as well.
Great.
What's the best way to follow you guys? Are you guys personal Twitters? Is it the Vaultz, Twitter account? What are the other outlets that our listeners can follow?
Sure. Yeah. They can follow me at I am Crypto Benz. They can also follow the Vaultz Capital Twitter handle, which is, easily found on X.
Yeah, it's the Vaultz Twitter handle on X is at v3tc_21. At v3tc_21.
Yeah.
We'll link it. We'll link it in the show notes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Eric and Alex, I really appreciate you guys jumping on. We're excited, to hopefully see you in person in Amsterdam, but you guys build and stay abreast of the process, because we're super excited, I think, about like these regional Bitcoin treasury plays outside of our own market, because I think they're super interesting. And then there's just that extra need for yield that you don't necessarily get with like a Robinhood, where people are trading as much, or there's so many Bitcoin options. So super interesting on the UK market. Anything Aquas listed, I think, is going to be something to follow. And great hearing your guys' story and what your vision is.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate your time, and thanks for having us on.
Yeah. All right. Cheers.
Beautiful. Cheers.